Oh, he don't start till eight something, 9?
8:20.
That's gonna be a pretty.
Doesn't feel like
Well, I
it.
thought we went to the next, we're going to level.
Yeah.
We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to thank everybody for coming tonight, and we're going to start with roll call.
Downey,
Yes.
Harvard,
Yes.
Kohler,
Yes.
Lavora,
Here.
Link,
Here.
Klein,
Here.
Over,
Here.
Whitesell.
Here.
Thank you, President.
We have an employee, Steve Barr, who was our zoning person for 7 years. He passed away last week, and I would like us to have a moment of silence, if you would. Thank you. I think we'll start moving on now. Okay, we're gonna start with approval of the minutes. Did everybody have a chance to read the minutes? If there's no questions, I'll take a motion to approve. Motion by Bill Lich to approve, second by Doug Dowd, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Next, we have, the bills. Has everybody had a chance to look at the bills? If there's discussion, we can have discussion. If not, I'll take a motion. Motion by Todd Kohler to approve the bills, seconded by John Lavora. The clerk will call the roll.
Whitesell,
Yes.
Over,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Link,
Yes.
Lavora,
Yes.
Kohler,
Yes.
Harvard,
Yes.
Downey.
Yep.
Next, you'll see in your packet, it's gonna be a new, it says tax on the top of it. Joey's gonna explain what this is. I'd asked her to, so we can let people know where we stand on taxes. She's gonna talk about that sheet.
This is, yeah, Sarah had asked me a couple weeks ago, or a month ago, if I would start including this in the packet. And this is just our monthly tax revenue that we get. Most of these are, this is what we received in March. However, this does not necessarily mean that this is taxes from, February. Usually you're 2 months behind. Usually they collect, the voucher will say, for these, they'll say, tax month is January, we collect in February, and then they give it to us in March. So, most of these work that way. Some of them are even farther back than that by, a couple of months. Let's see, the video gaming can be anywhere from 2 months previous to 3 to 4 months previous. There's kind of really no rhyme or reason to that one, but it'll tell you what months it includes on the voucher when it comes in. So anyway, this is just what we receive every month. The business district tax, I just put out to the side, all of these we keep except the business district tax. That amount we pay it quarterly to Carlinville Associates, so that's a in and an out. Personal property tax, 17.2% of that every quarter we write a check to the library. And then when we give the Sears tip, that's 75% of that will go to the TIF district there. We're allowed to keep 25% to go towards what we have had cost incurred in starting the TIF and whatever. So, if anybody has any questions, that'll be included hopefully every month, if I remember. And you can ask me, whatever you need about what tax is what. I'll give you some quick printouts on what it is. They're pretty much self-explanatory from the local share use tax. That is basically, like people buy vehicles, even if you buy it out of state, still, if it's registered here in state, you still get taxes from that. I think most of them are pretty self-explanatory. If you have any questions on any of them, what they're for, I'll be glad to tell you.
do it every month, and then you might have more questions about it. Next, we're gonna go to correspondence, and I have quite a bit, and I think we'll, take some of them together. At first, we have, Winning Communities. On Friday, April 23rd, the rural law office, do you know where that is across from the courthouse? They're getting a mural up, and it's happening at 6 o'clock, and they just want us to close East Main for an app, like from 5:30 to 7, because there's gonna be middle school kids there. So, that was one request we have. The next, I'm gonna go through these, and then we can, if we need to discuss one, we will, okay? The next one is already done. It has to do with walking from the train station. It already happened, so we're gonna get past that. The next one we have, we would like to request approval to sell Christmas themed donuts on May 1st on Carlinville Square for Cub Scout Pack 65. So that is for May 1st. The next one we have, a Hallmark Healthcare of Carlinville would like to participate in a Strikeout Strokes Month community awareness event in the month of May. Hallmark team members would like to hand out bottles of water with information about signs of stroke to community members. We would like to hand these out, items on either May 5th or 6th on Carlinville Square. Thank you for your support of our community. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, the last one is from Jean Sullivan. Good afternoon, Carla. We are hoping to be able to do outside venues again this year. Can you ask the mayor if there is any way we can get permission again for the use of the street for Saturday nights after 5 p.m. through the summer? This is the 66 in Thai Place. Does everybody understand what we're talking about? As usual, we would work around any of the Carnival scheduled events and would have the street completely clean and open by Sunday morning. This, I think, needs some discussion.
Yeah.
And, what is it, somebody's, I think every Saturday night.
I would say it's excessive.
You have what?
I said that seems excessive, people don't have done every.
Especially when you had bands, you know, last year we put a stipulation, he was done by 10. Well, I know the one night you passed that, because I got phone calls. You know, it's gotta be a stipulation, they gotta shut it down by a certain time.
Was he actually good about having it cleaned up on Sunday?
All but once or
I think
twice, when church was going on, I got a few phone calls, people complaining they couldn't park, you know, with there and stuff like that. Other than that, you could figure it out, clean it up. But just every night, I don't know, or every week.
What does anybody else think? I know we're trying to encourage business, and I understand that. I think it's a little hard on the people that live around there if you have a band every Saturday night,
Yeah.
but you have to listen to 10 o'clock.
Well, and also, you have other establishments that might want to do something too, and we're cutting them out.
So how do we want to deal with this, I guess is my.
How did they do it last year?
He just asked a couple times. And then
But
we
he had pretty
allowed-
much everything through the pandemic, every weekend he had it shut down.
But he asked every
Yes,
weekend.
yes, correct.
We just didn't give him carte blanche to
Yeah.
just do the whole summer.
I don't really have a problem with it, but say it could be too much, but just saying if he has a band, it's gotta be over by 10.
It doesn't say where they actually, it said there's gonna be bands, do we know that for sure, or they just wanna use the street for their venue, for their?
Well, he did bands last year.
Yes.
Sometimes there's one guy in the band.
Okay.
We could table if we'd like, but we could ask him,
Yeah.
have him be here at the next meeting possibly.
That would be the motion I would make, is let's table it and let's,
Have him come in and explain his intentions.
yeah, somebody contact him and,
What about the other corner with Joey's? Is he gonna close off that way too, or that's?
Haven't heard anything.
Have you heard
We haven't heard
anything?
anything. But he doesn't have bands, which is a little different. I mean, he blocks the street.
Well, I'm just saying, maybe 2 exits off the square block too.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. So we'll table this, and then somebody will get a hold of him.
I've made a motion to table it.
A motion to table the last correspondence from Gene Sullivan to talk to him, and then he can come to me. By Randy Over, seconded by Dick McLean. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Now, the other three, the Winning Communities Cub Scouts and Hallmark, are we all right with that? We can.
Move
I'll
to
take a
approve,
motion.
move to approve,
Move to approve,
those three.
the Winning Communities correspondent, Cub Scout Pack 65 correspondence, and Hallmark Healthcare. Motion by Tim Harbour, seconded by, Todd Kohler. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, now we're to, public comment. Now I have one from Matt Turk, who lives at 11 Fox Hill.
Point of order, is the visitor ordinance been fixed yet? So it's
I'm sorry.
the visitor ordinance that I got in trouble for a couple of years ago, claiming I addressed a council member specifically, even though I didn't. Has that been fixed?
I don't recall the conversation, so.
You called me out, so.
well,
If I call somebody, if I mention somebody's name, I'm just stating facts, I'm not talking to you specifically, so I'm getting in trouble about that again. I think every candidate that's in a contested election has talked about video streaming or some kind of video meeting, so, since Alderman Whitestaff mentioned in her interview in the Coon County Inquirer that she used to watch things on Facebook, I thought it was a good opportunity to go and talk about this again, since I haven't really done this regularly for almost 2 years, but I did it for parts 3 years before that. Just wanted to, I think it sounds like everybody really wants to do it, but that's what I was told 4 years ago too. I had a concerned citizen talk to me and, an influential member of the community talked to me and say that people did not like me recording the meetings. And I asked why, and didn't really get an answer, so that's part of the reason I stopped. And part of the reason, I also said, as soon as the meetings are recorded and broadcast properly, there's not much reason for me to be here anymore. So I thought that would push it forward, and didn't seem to. So, he was also going to attempt to help get the project done, and so I waited over 2 years, over 3 years since that conversation, and nothing happened. So, just thought, with the election coming up and everything, I recorded here for, like you say, parts of 3 years, and nobody even ever offered me a Wi-Fi password to be able to do it properly. So, the equipment is not expensive. I know there's a FOIA concern. If they're on YouTube, you just give them the YouTube link. I just don't see in 2021 why it has to be up to a private citizen to do it. I've had dozens of people tell me, why did you stop? We want you to keep, we want to keep doing it. And, I put it out there for a long time, and I didn't get any response. I didn't get anybody to run with it. So, it's kind of funny. At first, Mayor Musio used to announce when I was recording here, and after a while, that wasn't mentioned anymore. But I just thought that was kind of funny at first. I think everybody understands what's needed, but it's a pretty cheap camera or a phone, tripod, and it doesn't have to be a huge expense. So, and I think the video is nice to go back and reference. Last time I did public comment at a committee meeting, my public comment time got interrupted. I was berated by 2 aldermen, claiming that what I said wasn't true. And they went on tirades about me personally, and nothing to do with what I was talking about. I knew what I was saying was true, but gaslighting was in full effect. Went back and checked the video, and sure enough, I was right. I called both aldermen, left messages to discuss further. One called me back. I had a nice conversation. The other one didn't bother to call me back, not even apologize. That's kind of what people, that try to do public service. That's the way you get treated. So. Anyway, that's all I have, and I just hope it gets on the, we've got, Alderman Whitestaff, been here 6 months, you can put that in, you can put that on the agenda and get it talked about, it doesn't have to wait for an election, so I hope everybody considers that. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Now, we're going to switch up the agenda, and we're gonna put new business before old business, and the first thing under new business is we have an Eagle Scout we would like to recognize. So if Zayden would come up front. This is Zayden Reese. Here, let's just stand right over here so they can all see us. Proclamation honoring Zayden Alexander Reese, Eagle Scout recipient. Whereas the city of Carlinville takes pride in its sense of community and citizen involvement, and whereas the Eagle Scout is obligated to live his life with honor, loyalty, courage, and service, and whereas Zayden Alexander Reese, for his Eagle Scout project, rebuilt the large animal run at the McCoupin County Animal Shelter, and whereas Zayden Alexander Reese' commitment to leadership, service in the community is reflected in his steady, persistent progress to the ranks to achieve this prestigious award. Now, therefore, on behalf of the City Council and residents of the City of Carlinville, do hereby honor Zayden Alexander Reese of Boy Scout Troop 63 in his achievement of attaining the rank of Eagle Scout, the highest rank in Boy Scouts. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Carlinville to be affixed this 19th day of October 2020, Deanna DeMuzio. It was Deanna because we were gonna do this in October, so this was something that she prepared for you, and I wanted to make sure that her name was still on it for you. And then if his family would like to come up, first of all, why don't you all his family who wants to have a picture with us would be welcome to come up. Come on up.
There can be a big camera there.
I know. I know. Bill, why don't you get over here, and I think I'll
Let me
just,
get everybody.
I think I should be over.
Okay.
Okay, Xander, can you get,
Get everybody there.
can you see everybody?
Yes. Okay, that's good. Okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, Zay.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have another proclamation about Earth Day, and I'm gonna have Randy and Mary Tinder come up. They're one of the, we have a lot of volunteers in Carlinville. They're one of many that we're gonna be here tonight. And then after I read this proclamation, they have lots of things that are gonna happen during Earth Day week, so they'll go through that with you, okay? This is Mary and Randy Tinder. Earth Day Proclamation. Whereas on April 22nd, 1970, Galen Nelson, the father of the Earth Day, had an idea that has now grown into worldwide celebration for the planet. And whereas this holiday called Earth Day was first observed with Americans marching and demonstrating in the streets for a healthy, sustainable environment in massive rallies across the U.S. And whereas Earth Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas Earth Day influenced the creation of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and numerous laws that protect our environment, the Clean Air Act, the Water Quality Improvement Act, the Resource Recovery Act, the Toxic Substance Control Act, the Endangered Species Act, and the Safe Drinking Water Act. And whereas in 1990, Earth Day went global, mobilizing over 200 million people in 141 countries, putting environmental issues on the world stage. And whereas Earth Day 2000 focused on climate change and clean energy, and whereas 2020 marks the 50th anniversary of Earth Day and was celebrated by over 1 billion people worldwide, and and whereas Earth Day 2021 will mark the 51st anniversary of this holiday, and the theme is Restore Our Earth. Celebrate by appreciating and respecting the natural world. Now I therefore, Sarah Oswald, Mayor of the City of Carlinville, do hereby proclaim April 22nd, 2021 as Earth Day in the City of Carlinville. I urge all citizens to celebrate by supporting our native bees, recycle and repurpose, plant wildflowers, reduce plastic dependency, plant an organic vegetable garden, and conserve water. Pass down a love of nature and plants to our kids. Dated this 5th day, April 2020, Mayor Sarah Oswald.
I wish you could see my smile. That is great.
Okay, now I'm gonna let, there's a whole week celebrating Earth Day, and they've got some really good programs, and they're just gonna tell people what they are, and then they'll leave some brochures if somebody wants to get it to remember the dates, okay? So I'll let you guys talk about that. Okay, are you talking about?
No, I'm not talking.
Back up there, back there for you. We couldn't do this all in one day, so we have decided to just call it Earth Week. So starting as of tonight with the mayor and the proclamation, then our next event will be on Saturday, April 10th, where we're going to lay off what we call the grassy trails at the new MJM Community Garden. And so that will be out south of their building. There's all kinds of details and phases that are gonna come forward with that garden. It's not gonna happen overnight. It may be a 2-year process. And on April 17th, we will actually seed those trails with volunteers to make Carlinville beautiful. On Sunday, April 18th, I really don't want you to miss this one. This is where the youth are leading the pollinator media outreach. It's going to be a pollinator, bring back the pollinator briefing at the high school at 1 o'clock. All these times are on these sheets, and we've marked them if they're open to the public or if they happen to be something private. The only time it's private is if there's a COVID restriction where you can't actually have the public attend. So come support your youth leaders on the 18th. The cross-country team and our Macomb County 4-H members are going to be doing something called plogging. I don't know if you can hear P-L-O-G-G-I-N-G, and that's picking up trash while jogging. So they're going to be doing that in the city streets and also at Beaver Dam. And Mayor Oswald also mentioned, I believe, I skipped the big day. On the 22nd, which is Earth Day, there's a celebration that starts at 8:30 in the morning and goes to 2:30 at the primary school with presentations, and the intermediate school will be bussed over, so all kinds of activities. And Cindy Tips put that whole thing together, so she's not able to be here tonight, so Randy's her stand-in. On Friday the 23rd, I think it was also mentioned that the community mural is going to go up, and that's called the Imagination Garden Mural. You don't want to miss that. 6 o'clock. Let's see what's next one. The Park District has a big program. It's called A Walk Through Loveless Park. There'll be more information out on that soon. Blackburn College student intern is going to have a series of pollinator-friendly articles that will be available on their website. And the last thing, I think it's the last thing, is what about bats? So I'm not going to tell you much about that, but we are starting to research the benefits of bats and how they might help us with the mosquito population. So I hope you'll take a look at these brochures, and then there'll be more detailed information out soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was good to you.
Thank you for all you guys do.
Sorry.
I want to step back a minute. Was there more public comment? Did somebody else have a public comment? I didn't have one of these for you, so, but you're welcome to come up and give a public comment. And I'm sorry I missed you. I was going by what?
My name is Jean Opegard. I live down on Southwest Street. And I came before and complained about the curbs and found out, really, I was complaining a little too early, because I can get all the way from here to the school with ramps. But coming up West Street, on the corner of West First, South, whatever that is, by the parking lot, there's no ramp there, and you have to go half a block one way or half a block the other way to get onto the sidewalk. And that's a very busy street, a very busy corner. I say a few prayers every time I go through there, so, and I've noticed the next square is torn up right now because of the water pipes or something. So while they're pouring cement, could they just please put a ramp on that corner?
Well, it's a little more involved than that, but yes. What is the corner at, I wonder, did you get that corner?
Is that the one you and I
West
looked at?
First South and West Street.
Right, that's one you and I looked at the other day.
It's right, CMP.
I would appreciate it.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. And sorry I missed you, I didn't mean to do that
That's okay.
intentionally.
We did turn
Okay.
in it is on our list of things to do.
Is
I was
there
gonna
any
say-
other public comment?
Bill, why don't you go ahead and explain that has, I'm not sure everybody heard that has been turned in
Yeah.
to do that.
What Gene's talking about, right at the corner of, the southwest corner of the CMB parking lot, somebody did some water jetting to run some, wires. Yeah. And they took out a section of concrete. Well, what I requested Dan to do is find out who did that work, because they have to fix the sidewalk. And while they're doing that, they're gonna tear out 3 sections of concrete and pour it so that it pours out flat, as opposed to, because we're gonna make it like the other side of the street. And I don't know if the other side of the street was done that way on purpose, but that's the way it is now. So there's no curb cuts or anything like, we're gonna have to change all the curb cuts in town anyway.
Appreciate it.
So, anyway, that should be happening here pretty quick.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. There weren't any public comment on, okay. Now we're gonna move on to old business, and first on the agenda is Ernie Mansfield. I'll let Tim, you wanna do that?
Yes, if I could, and
Yeah.
I'll step here and keep my social distancing, but the mask tends to muffle my voice, so if you don't mind, I'm gonna take it off so that everybody has an awareness. Ernie, if you'd come up, please. Ernie is here to discuss the upcoming expiration of the contract we're under that is provisioning our natural gas to our facilities, city facilities. And I'll let him take it from there. All of you, this changes daily, by the way. So I want you to all be aware of that. It's kind of like the stock market. It goes up and down throughout the day. Ernie has graciously provided the April 5th numbers for comparison purposes, and I'll let him do the explanation. Ernie?
Okay. I hope you let me do this. I prepared this with the numbers that will show you some comparison numbers. Number one, let's go, you see at the very bottom of the sheet, you'll see symmetry. And symmetry is the current supplier of your natural gas. They have changed because of the pandemic, or because of the polar vortex that happened just this last month. It hit Texas really hard. You'll find that they're changing their language, and they went to the term called true up. You'll see it there. And because they have elected to make this change, we're going to all of our customers through Lands Energy and advocating that they move away from symmetry. True up is not what you want in your language. There was a company that up in my area of the woods that was supplying natural gas to a school district. school district had what they thought was a $600 charge, but because of this true-up, went to $6,000. And so that's just the beginning of what we're looking at, and every supplier that has natural gas customers, they are moving away from this language, to where you then will be on 100% swing or full term. And either one of those terms in your contract is needed in order for you to avoid those type of charges. So what we're looking at here, and excuse me, I have no connection to Mansfield Distribution. That's just, I have no part of that, as well as I'm not connected to Mansfield Plumbing for their schools and things like that. I'm not there. Just a little play there. We're advertising that we go to Constellation, and you have a choice between 24 months to 36 months, or even a year. But with the pricing as it is at this particular time, we're advertising, we're advocating that you look at doing 36 months, because the natural gas is only going to get more. It really is. They've stopped fracking, they're pulling more and more out of storage, and by that happening, we're going to see an escalation in price. So if you can put a hedge at this point in time to supply the city with a little more advantageous price, I would encourage you to do it. Here's the thing, we're right now, we're looking at this, and you need to make the decision if you want that, the 24, or the 1, the 24, or the 36. And I need to have the person responsible, I guess, Sarah, you're the signature of this now, I don't know.
The call to action for the council, just maybe to very briefly explain.
Good.
If you take a look at the therms down there, you're gonna see the sum total of 15,400 were utilized throughout 2020. At the symmetry rate, you can see that the amount that was paid was $3,921. Over to the far right, you see that same pay period, that same period of payments would have been $5,057 with the utility provider themselves. So if you now look, and Ernie did me a favor of analyzing, I said, okay, that's great, 2020, show me what 2021 looks like. You see that same comparison there, and you see a pretty substantial jump has already occurred from March into April. That doesn't mean it won't level out, okay? It could. These are adjusted daily. But the real issue here was symmetry, or continuing with them. By the way, that contract expires at the end of April, okay? So the action that we need to consider is having Ernie coordinate with the mayor to go ahead and get a contract executed that's to our benefit. That could be a timing in rates.
It needs to be before the next meter reading.
Yes.
And that could be somewhere around April the 12th.
So
So
the urgency.
We need to move on.
Yeah, the urgency behind this is these rates fluctuate every day. The long-term impact of the policy, I'm not here to judge the policy associated with where we're headed with green energy or anything like that. But you all know what that policy looks like or is being proposed, and that's likely going to have a drastic impact on some of this cost. So whether you wanna go 2 years, 3 years, I'm not here to support or deny either one of those, but you can see the leverage that you need to be considering with regards to the current and the projected prices that are listed on the bottom edge of it.
Did we do 36 months the last time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
and we're at the end of it now. And, like I said, it's, I know things has been kind of chaotic for the city too, as far as getting things moved around. And, I was at a loss as to exactly, I tried Sarah a few times to try to get to her, but she's had a really full plate, so I didn't know who to go, and finally I was able to contact Kim, and we connected and got the numbers going, and this is where we are now, so.
And I just wanted to provide the rest of the council the analyzations so that you can consider, we can consider, executing that authority. But you do not want the true up. That issue remains, the polar vortex. You've heard the horror stories. That's where the company reserves the right to come back in, regardless of what they've quoted you, and said, we had an event that we couldn't control, so your projected cost is no longer this, it's going to be this, and it's basically, what I call, customer caused. Okay, in other words, the usage skyrockets regardless of the size of the contract, so, you know, then they skyrocket it because they have to go to the marketplace and buy it. Is that a fair summary?
Pretty good. They're having to pull more and more out of storage. And when they do that, that costs money. And some of these, you know, they can't supply it quick enough. That's the problem.
So I guess I would say, does anybody on the council have any questions?
Do you have a question?
Well, I mean, so you would be presenting the contract for the consideration at the next council meeting. I guess I don't see one in the packet.
There's not one because I didn't know which company you wanted to use.
Okay. Well, I mean, that would be the authorization. If the council wanted to move forward, you would recommend that to Mr.
There has to be a contract in place by the meter read. If you don't have one in place, you'll roll to symmetry for a year.
Yep, yep.
And I don't think that's what would be advocated on our part. I mean, because this company we've tried everything we can to get them to pull that out of there.
Right.
It's Tura, and they're not willing to do that, so.
Well, I'm just saying there isn't a contract before the council, and so the council may have to call a special meeting to get one on the agenda to approve. I guess what I'm saying, because it's not on the agenda tonight.
I got that.
Yeah.
And we were without time, and if we have to wait for that to be designated, you're gonna go back to the utility. If you go back to utility, you're gonna have the same thing that I just showed you in these numbers. And I can't stop it. If I don't have something in place prior meter reading, that's where we're gonna end up.
Well, I'm just suggesting to the council can do what they wish, but
Sure.
to direct you to come forth with the contract that they would like to proceed with.
I
but
can
they
have
may
a
well
contract
have to have
tomorrow.
a special meeting in order
Sure.
to do that, so the public and the council has the power to look at the contract. So,
That's fair enough, but like I said, I can have that tomorrow. And I'm trying to avoid you moving to the utility.
I understand that. I'm just saying legally, that's where we're at. So we have to have a contract for these folks to approve. So-
I'll need a call in the morning to let me know which way they wanna go, and I can get it, and I'll have it sent to you right away.
Was,
Well, but the council, if they choose, could, I think, I don't wanna put words in your mouth, Kim, but you're talking about whether or not you're gonna proceed with the contract, so the council could direct you to
Sure.
bring forth a contract, is what I'm suggesting. It's just, we can't vote on a contract we don't have in front of us.
I got that.
But we can vote on tonight what we want you to go ahead and do.
Yes,
Yeah.
you can.
48 hours, we have to have 48 hours closed, right, Mayor? You have to close the special meeting 48 hours prior to meeting, right?
yes, I was just thinking as a, no. So we need a motion to have Bernie proceed.
Doug's got a question.
I got a question. So as part of that, whoever makes that motion, can they just go ahead and authorize the mayor and the city attorney to review it and sign it on our
Yes.
behalf?
That's what I was
Well,
thinking.
I think you have to vote on the contract. We don't have the contract in front of us.
Legally, that's
Yeah.
the way it's supposed to be done.
Yeah.
Let's have a
If
special
you're
meeting.
looking for a motion, I'll make a motion
Yeah, that's fine.
that we go ahead and do this, have Ernie draw up a contract, I'm assuming with Constellation.
Yes, sir.
And all I need to know, do you wanna do a 3-year contract?
3 years would be better, to me, as long as you
That
get
would be my,
money.
that would be my recommendation, that we do a 3-year contract with Constellation.
I have a motion on the table by Randy.
Yeah, I made a
Over
motion. Second.
To have a 3-year contract drawn up by Ernie for Constellation, seconded by Dick McLean. Does everybody understand the motion?
Do we wanna say that we need a special meeting then to approve it as part of this motion?
Sure.
I'll give it to you.
Peter.
Yeah, we'll add a special meeting to that motion.
With a special meeting in a couple days to approve it. Is
Yes,
that right?
that's fine.
Okay, so I want the clerk to, does everybody understand what we're doing?
When are we having the meeting?
What?
You gotta have 48 hours, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, to,
From tonight?
I think you should leave that to the mayor and the clerk to set
yes,
the
we'll
special
determine
meeting.
when the special
Okay.
meeting will be, if that's all right with
Yep.
people.
Yeah.
Okay, so the clerk will call the roll on this. Kohler,
Yes.
Downey,
Yes.
Flagstaff,
Yes.
McLean,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Link,
Yes.
Harbor,
Yes.
Over.
Yes,
Thank you.
thanks, Ernie.
Thank you, Ernie, so we'll be,
Thanks, Ernie.
You bet. Carlin, you'll have it tomorrow.
thank you very much.
You bet.
Appreciate it. Okay, next on the agenda, we have market condition report and budgetary financing considerations and options for Carlinville capital infrastructure projects, including police department building improvements, renovations of the former Frontier building. Charles Zitnick, public finance, D.A. Davidson and Company project funding. I'll turn that over to Ken.
Yeah, Charlie, if you could come up, please, really appreciate you coming. As all of you know, we have spent a diligent amount of time, with every effort to, understand, what available resources we have to begin the strategic long-term plan. We have one item in place, that we know about, and we've got a slew of items that everybody tells us we need to get done. You know, whether that's streets, whether that's sewer, whether that's water. Well, this is the guy here, I've heard from him, many of you have, that wants to overview the current conditions. I wanna go very, very clearly on record. This is a result of the past council's actions that have left us in a good financial position, okay? But this is not about deficit spending. This is about the consideration of debt management. What is the wherewithal we have to establish a longer-term business plan that begins to look at the critical infrastructure? Charlie's gonna review this, I'm not the expert, but you've got what's called non-enterprise, and you've got what's called enterprise. The difference between those, as an example, water and sewer are enterprise accounts, they're revenue accounts. Okay, non-enterprise would encompass your public safety, your streets, et cetera, et cetera. So there's issues here that we all need to understand better, and this is the expert that's come here to talk about not only the current conditions, but what we need to do to move forward as we enter this budget process to get a supplemental budget. Remember, a budget doesn't mean a spend. It means it's been identified, we're looking forward to some of the projects that need to be prioritized and put into place. It's not a preach, it's just the effort that we've all talked about in trying to put some action items around that. So if I can go to you,
Thank you.
Charlie?
Thank you. Good to be back, and I'm kind of thinking through time frames, and I'm using Easter as a point in time. And if you think about, where we were a year ago, Easter, and where we are now, we were just beginning to understand how violent this whole COVID situation is and was. And this Easter, my takeaway yesterday was, we're not out of the woods yet, but we're well on the way to being out of the woods. And just the different dynamic that there is in a room today when we're not all staring into the abyss, wondering, from your perspective, what's gonna happen to property values, what's gonna happen to sales tax revenue, what's gonna happen to motor vehicle tax, what's gonna happen to the economy. And fast forward, and what's happened for Carlinville, and I'm picking on Carlinville, but in the past week, you have found out, you've got locked in place, locked and loaded, a little more than $300,000 for the start of what's going to be the Public Safety Center of a grant from the state, which who knows how you did this or how your delegation did this, but the state of Illinois didn't honor a whole lot of the grants that they made last year on account of COVID, but they honored yours because, and I'm using the term Dave used with me, it was a bonded grant, and I don't quite know from a legislative perspective what that means, but what I do know is you got your grant. Additionally, just in the past week and a half, and I think you used the term not getting political at all. I mean, whether we like or don't like what Washington is doing and what the legislature is doing, the reality is that Carlinville got about $180 per person in a direct grant from the federal government to be used for water, sewer, broadband, and a couple of other uses that the terms are still being worked. The quote about Chicago, or excuse me, quote about the federal government is the big print giveth and the small print taketh away. Well, the big print is that the city got about $180 per person in grant money, direct to the city. It's not coming through the county. It's from it goes from the federal government to the state. The state has 30 days to get it into the hands of the city. The city can use it for broadband, sewer, water, and it's not a use it or lose it. It's you've got it and you can use it. So, kind of, if you think perspective of, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a freight train. And a year ago now, it was a freight train. So, I'm trying to just kind of set the tone for how I see things in Carlinville. When you look at the city from a macro perspective, and we'll talk about the police center in a minute. I look at the credit and I look at the population. There's things you can control and things you can't. And one of them is you have some control over your population long term, but not day to day. That's a factor in a ratings analysis. You have some control over sales tax. You have some control over property tax. But these are dynamics that you don't have day-to-day control over. But when I look at the things you don't necessarily have that day-to-day control over, and then put next to it the things you do, which is the technical, managerial, and financial operations of a city, how you allocate in the budget process, where does that fall on the rating matrix? And I think realistically, I'm not a ratings analyst, but I've done a lot of credit work. The city on a good day with the right analyst is probably an A- credit. On a bad day or with a bad analyst, it's probably a BBB+ credit. Both of those are investment grade. Both of those are very nice ratings. And I think given where the city is, it's probably a weak A- or a very strong BBB+, which, for a community like this is much to be proud of and much to celebrate. Kind of back, when we were starting on this process and staring into the abyss and wondering, what's this going to look like going ahead? I think we see, great economic recovery. We see obviously a change of administration and an administration now in place that is steering direct dollars back, like, back to the sixties when cities used to get block grant money directly. Just, I mean, it was, you know, so many of the things in so many cities were built with direct federal aid, right to the cities. And it looks like we're in a period like that again right now. And, you know, the approximately $1 million the city is receiving from the, let's see, the American Recovery Plan Act, which is the one just passed, is only one of the pots of money. The next one is going to be the infrastructure bill that's being debated right now. And that also contains direct money to the cities once again. And it's, excuse me, it's not necessarily based on population, but you can kind of do a mathematic solve, like for this most recent pool of grant money, that it's about $180, $190 per person in a community. So with that, so you've got the grant money coming in, and I think, you know, the way I look at the grant money and how it impacts the rating that we're talking about is, do you spend that money one-off on one thing, or do you lever that money and use it to bring more activity, more economic growth to the city? And I think during a budget process, and certainly during a rating process, an analyst or a budget officer is going to be very tuned into that process. That how do you go about? I'll give you a background story. When from where I'm from, Missouri, city of Boonville, Missouri, was one of the first cities in the state to get, back then, a true, honest-to-God riverboat casino. And I mean, like, leave the dock kind of riverboat. Maybe that's normal in Illinois. It wasn't in Missouri. Little Boonville was getting $3 million a year in revenue from their boat. And their first budget process, they had $31 million of departmental requests for that $3 million. Think about that, $31 million, and they had $3 million to work with. So the idea is to continue with the technical, managerial and financial controls that you all have been using. It's been a robust process, and excuse me, I think that's going to drive a very strong rating for anything you do going forward. When we started this process, we were looking at, economically, for this kind of credit, probably a sub 2% cost of money, maybe less than 2% interest rate, just barely. This is where I'm getting to the bad news. I think it's been a very good process you've gone through, and I think you need to go through a process to get to a point that you're issuing debt. It needs to be carefully considered, but we have been in an upward trending tax-exempt interest environment nationally, and probably more so in Illinois, because Illinois is being tarred, cities in Illinois are being tarred with the actions of the state legislature and the pension problem that they have at the state level. If I were estimating today, and I think you've probably seen my numbers, I'm pretty conservative on estimates, meaning I tend to estimate high and come back with better news. You're probably looking at something in the 2.5% range if it were today, so maybe 60 basis points over what it would have been 6-8 months ago, 9 months ago actually. But I don't think, excuse me, I don't think that change, you know, it's not a move from 9% to 10.5%. It's a move from 1.9 to 2.5. I mean, the interest expense on the project, to do this project the way you want to do it, we're probably talking about right now a difference of $15,000 or $18,000 a year for the additional cost of funds by not having locked it in 6 or 9 months ago when, you know, I didn't know, I don't think any of us knew where things were going 9 months ago. So I'm not faulting myself or anybody else for carefully considering what was being offered. With respect specifically, I told Kim I'd get into this on the Public Safety Center. As I understand, the grant is firm and in place. It's a matching grant, meaning as you pay, they pay a percentage of as an invoice comes in, the city pays its part of the invoice and the state pays the other part of the invoice. So it's a reimbursement grant, but the funds are locked in. And you have a contract in front of you for improvements to the Frontier building to turn it into the facility that's been envisioned. And I think the financing is very doable. What you've done historically when you've done financing is you've done alternative revenue source bonds. And just quick, I know I went through this last time I was here, but just to remind you, an alternative revenue source bond is where you pledge a revenue stream of the city, some revenue stream to be identified. And then on an annual basis, you choose as a council during your budget period to abate the tax, okay, that if you didn't choose to abate it, would be levied on the citizenry. Instead, that debt service is paid from sources in the city, general or other legally available sources, rather than levying a tax. So from a city's perspective, it's probably considered more like a lease. From a lender's perspective, it's considered more like a bond, in that if you don't abate the tax, you're gonna pay it from other funds, but if you don't have other funds to pay it, then you don't abate the tax. So that's the underlying structure of an alternative revenue source bond. And probably, I think the other question you had was on timing. I think it's something your police chief is also vitally interested in, as are your contractors. It's about a 5-week process, 5 or 6 week process to go through an issuance of the structure I just described. With that, I also said to Kim in my last transmittal to him, as Mark Twain said, nobody was saved after 20 minutes or something like that. So I think it's time for me to stop talking and open it up to questions. And thank you for giving me the floor.
Do we have questions?
Yes.
So what's in general the amount you're talking about?
The dollar amount in the contract is $2.35 million, and the grant you've received is $300,000.
Right. So at this point, you're just looking at doing something for the police station only?
Right, because you've got, for the broader picture, you now have grant money coming in, you now have grant money coming in for water, sewer, broadband, and a list of other things, but as far as enterprises, it's limited to water, sewer, broadband. So, during your budget process, you're going to reassess what you're putting from general into water and sewer, for example, or into communications. And instead of funding that from general, you perhaps fund that from your grant money.
Right, and what specifically grant money are you talking of? I don't know of any grant money that we're
This
doing.
is, the most recent act passed was the American Rescue Plan Act. And that's where your funding is coming from. And it's already designated how much you're getting.
And that's a definite,
That,
we get that.
that is already passed in federal law, yes.
And do we know how much exactly Carlinville will get?
Actually, we do know exactly how much, but I don't have that number here.
I'll quote what the projection is, and this is from the federal government, 677,000, I believe.
Okay.
And that's a projection. But again, that, as Jody, as Charlie put it, that's the big print. Now we're waiting for the fine print where the government tells you, okay, here's your dollars, and then they're gonna come back and say, and this is what you can spend it on. And I believe there is timing to get it spent too, correct?
Yeah, the fund, there's the two key factors. The federal government has to have it to the states within 60 days. The states have to have it to the cities within 30 days, first half, second half a year later. And it all has to be, the cities have to have spent this pool by December 1st, 2024.
So but it is a definite. You say it's a definite?
I'm saying it's as definite as anything the federal, it has been signed into law. You know, we had, probably 12 years ago now, retroactively, we had an income tax increase, if you remember. It was 12 years ago. So, as definite as I know the federal government to be.
That's my point.
Well, I think you bring up a valid point, Jody, but let's do a little bit deeper dive. There was an act passed in December, okay? There's still money of that $900 billion that was signed in November, or December, prior to the new administration coming in. The money we're talking about here, please correct me if I'm wrong, is what is in the 1.9 trillion that has already been signed into law, and we already have a, as you know, don't confuse it with the maybe infrastructure plan of 2 trillion that's now out there being talked about. So if you're saying, are you confident you're gonna get it? Well, it was signed in the 1.9, and there was a portion of that that was earmarked, as was stated, for municipal use. It's funneled through the state, granted, but they have 30 days to get it to the municipalities. Now, if you're asking me, geez, Kim, when's that flow gonna hit? I don't know. What I do know is it's the law. So, you know, could their projection be adjusted based on population? Because they use some general formulas for cities under 50,000?
Yeah, non-enterprise, is not the right word, but yeah, for communities under 50, yeah.
For communities under 50. So again, I'm not trying to make it confusing, I'm trying to answer your
No,
question.
it's not confusing.
Well,
It's not
and
confusing at all. It's
I would
just-
say, you know, I've filed income tax, and I'm confident I'm getting a refund this year. Am I guaranteed a refund? No, but I'm confident I'm getting one. I guess that's the best way I can answer it.
Well.
There's
You're
no
a little more
guarantee,
positive than I am.
we're gonna be here tomorrow morning.
But again, I guess I wanna emphasize that I hope we can engage in a budget process. Remember, you do not have to expend if the money doesn't show up, but you can have it in the budget, ready to be appropriated when it does show up.
There you go.
Just because the money's in the budget doesn't mean you're gonna spend it. You're gonna make budget adjustments every year. What we're trying to do is put together a predictable, long-term plan. And in not only public works, not just public safety. I think we're sitting here making decisions between projects, and I feel personally like we're stumbling because we have so much that we're talking about what we can't do rather than what we can do. And I'm just trying to get us as much education as I can, thank you, to understand that, yes, we don't want a budget that just says, oh, we're just gonna deficit spend. I'm looking to try to get something in place that says, here's a capital budgets project. Can we put together some supplemental line items with some predictability that says, if this comes in, we have plans to spend it. And if it doesn't come in, this council sits in the catbird seat to say we can't spend what we don't have.
That's right.
I think my feeling on it I feel like we're putting the cart before the horse. We know that we have a ton of issues out there that we want to do. We've known that for a long time. We have needed to do this. We have needed to come up with a capital plan. We needed to figure out how much we can borrow. Is it 2 million? Maybe we can borrow 7 million. If it's a payment we feel that we can afford and we can do. I still think it is in the best interest of the city to take the issues that we have that are the ones that we really need to work on the most. To me, that is what we are looking at now as far as our water and meters. Because to get those fixed, that's revenue. That's revenue for us, and we need revenue. To me, that is the most important thing right now that we need to focus on. Because that's just flat out revenue. So to take a handful of things that we decide we need to do, and say, let's just say, you say we can afford a payment on $7 million. Okay, that's fine. Then we need to find what we want to spend that $7 million on. What is most important? Maybe the police building gets a piece of the pie. Maybe, they're projected right now to get $2 million to redo the building. Maybe they only get $1 million to do. And everybody else, and then West Main gets this. We spend $1 million on our meters. Again, to me, that's the most important thing because it's revenue. I just feel like we have had these issues for years, these big issues for years. And I don't deny this police building at all. It's a wonderful building. It was a wonderful opportunity that Chief got to get this building for free. But I don't know that is after I've been here 8 years and the things that we have on our list of things to do, I don't know that the police building is the thing that needs to come first. And I feel that we're putting a project that's come along in the last 6 months, I feel like we're putting that first over things that we know we've had for years. I would rather see, instead of just doing $2 million for this one project, I'd rather see us look, yes, I know we need a budget, we need a capital budget, we need to figure out what we can do. I don't wanna see a $2 million project here, and because that's a project we can afford a payment on, and then down the road, we wanna do meters. Well, that's another bond issue, so there's another payment. Then there's something else that we want to do, so there's another bond issue, so that's another payment. All of a sudden, we've got 3 bond payments that we're trying to make instead of combining everything into one. I still don't feel at the end of the day that we are looking at what is the most important thing for us to do. And to me, our meters just have to come first. It's revenue that we're losing.
Mayor, can I address meters, please?
Yes, you can.
Okay, I spent hours meeting with Greg at Woodyard and Kern. There is a plan being developed, and it is prioritizing some of the gaps, by the way, between water treatment, water consumption, and water billing. We have identified errors in that. Okay, so I don't disagree with anything being said, and I do agree that we have to have a plan. But again, let's have the facts on the table. Bill, did you meet with Greg?
Yep.
We're asking for, because I'm part of Public Works too, okay? And we're asking for that information that Jody is referring to, okay? It does have to be a holistic look. I have no issue with that. But if we wait to cross every T and dot every I, the interest rates are gonna go up. The money may or may not be available, and if you don't have, I'm gonna repeat myself, if you don't have a shovel-ready plan, when the bread is falling from the sky, as is anticipated, okay, then we're gonna be behind the curve. And I'm not suggesting this is a one-year budget. This is probably looking out well beyond that. So those are my comments in response. It is, water meters are not being ignored. There is an issue. And last week I met one-on-one with Greg.
And I'll just say at the end, I know that water meters are not being ignored. I know they're being looked at. But to me, it's, I just don't know how you can ignore things that have been going on for years and then jump into a project that came along in 6 months.
Oh, I haven't been here for years, Jody, and I haven't ignored it for 6 months. So I'll respond.
Okay.
No,
Thank you.
I don't mean that. I mean, we as a council.
We have a gentleman here, and I appreciate your comments, I appreciate your comments. A lot of these things you're talking about, if you go to all the meetings, they talk about these things, but you don't really attend all those, so, anyway, let's move forward here. And,
We may have some other questions.
yes, that's what I want. Anybody else who has
So-
questions?
I got some questions. So, again, this whole thing, and I hate to get off the topic a little bit, but I know the police building has come fast and furious. I know there's a lot of pressure to get this thing moving, a lot of pressure. And I echo what Jody says, we don't have, and I have harped for this for months and talked to most of the council members, that we need to have a plan in place to look at our critical infrastructure, water, streets, sewer. Our sewer plant needs serious money thrown at it. And I know we're looking at getting some grant money from this, potentially, from the feds, but that's not even gonna touch what we need to do in this city. Not even gonna touch it, okay? We've got an estimated $10 million worth of projects that Woodard and Kerr has outlined that need to be addressed pretty soon, okay? And going back a little bit, when this police building was originally presented to us, we got the money for free, we got the building for free, and it was said to us by the previous mayor that we would continue to seek grants to, not loans, grants to finish the rehab of that building. And my concern is, we keep piecemealing this whole thing together. We got $2 million here, $2.5 million here. We've currently got $2.5 million loan for the water, to Jersey Rural Water, which we said we might get paid back, but I don't think it's ever gonna happen. That's a loan we already got out. If this thing goes through, it's another bond that we gotta pay. So I mean, we need to come up with a plan, a serious plan of how we're gonna address all the issues. And again, I know the police department would love to have a new building. I know they got space issues and they got limitations back there. But in my mind, when you look at the overall picture of the city and all the stuff that needs to be addressed, in my list of priorities, that's kind of dropped to the bottom. When I get calls from the residents of the city, they tell me we need to look at sidewalks, sewer, streets, water, there's all the issues. No one ever says, your police department needs a new building. Residents are always telling me, you know, we got problems with the water, we got problems with sewer, we got problems with the sidewalks and streets. So, again, I'm not anti-police, I'm not anti-police building. I just think the priority is very low for me in that aspect. And again, right now, it seems like that's a want and not a need. So.
Thank you, Doug. Do we have any other comments, questions?
The money that you talked about from the government, can we pay off loans with that?
Sir?
As I said, the big print giveth and small print takes away. That's one of the provisions that's in there. No, you can't use it to retire existing debt.
I mean, if you had to borrow to start a project because they were delayed getting you the money.
Don't know, I defer to your attorney. If you had a reimbursement resolution in Illinois and the grant didn't restrict that, that'd be.
That'd be pretty unusual.
Okay.
Would
Thank
you
you.
repeat the question? We couldn't hear that. His question.
The question was, if the funding was delayed from the grants the city has been awarded, could the city borrow on its own and use that grant money to repay the borrowing? Did I state that correct, Mr. Link?
And your
And
answer
and
was?
the answer is no, we don't think so.
the 677 that we're kind of estimated to possibly get could go then onto the bond. It could be paid toward the bond payment, or toward the principal on the bond.
The language as it's written right now in the federal legislation is no.
The way it's codified right now, it's, Charlie represented it, I think, twice now, is water, sewer, broadband. But there's no definitions below that.
One other question. So if they go forward, if they decide to put police building ahead of infrastructure, where, and they go for this bond, where does that money come from? How do we pay for it? Do you have any idea, Jody?
No, I'm not saying I can't, I have no, I haven't received any information
Okay.
on this. I don't know. I'm not saying we can't afford a payment. I think we can afford a payment, but I don't know.
She needs more information,
Well,
and I understand it.
I mean, it's never come down, and no one's ever asked, what line is this gonna come out of? Where is it? No one's asked me that.
Well, and you know, I think the questions you're asking are part of your budget process. I mean, it's not, since it is a new expense, there's gonna be, clearly there are gonna be some efficiencies and what have you, but at the end of the day, there is going to be a new expense. But it's a determination that you all make on where those funds come from to make that annual payment. And when I describe the alternative revenue source bonds, keep in mind that's a bond, and this is what you've done in the past, that each year you make a budget decision to not levy a tax, and you'll pay it from other revenue. If you don't abate that tax, then it's put on the tax rolls, and people pay that in a property tax. So there are mechanisms to fund it, but I think the question is, from a budget perspective, where do you want to fund it from?
Right, right.
And that's ultimately a governance decision.
Right, and our budget right now isn't completed yet for the year, so we don't really know, what our bottom line is. I fully anticipated, I didn't anticipate any kind of, that we would go in or make any kind of decision tonight on doing this or not, for that reason, because we haven't discussed where is the money going to come from, how are we going to make the payment, and there again, the budget isn't done. I fully anticipated this budget would probably have to be amended once this, we'll come up with our budget at the normal time, but that if all of this was settled later, then the budget would be amended to make that, to make that happen, but at this point, we're not, that hasn't been brought up in budget at all, as far as a payment or anything like that.
Based on just your overview on a positive note, let's not talk about what project we're trying to fund. Let's talk about the point Jody's making. What is, or what do you need from us to predict what bonding capacity the city of Carlinville has in general? To the point that Doug's making, to the point that Jody's making, what is it that we can provide? What analysis has to happen that says,
I guess back when Dr. Stephen Covey wrote 7 Habits of Highly Successful X, where it was families, children, professionals, he had this thing about the sphere of interest and the sphere of influence. So my sphere of interest is this, and my sphere of influence is this. What I was brought in for was specifically to look at the ability to finance the improvements for a building that ultimately was gifted to the city. And I've modeled that, and as we've kind of gone down this seeking our way during COVID and what that means to a community like Carlinville, I think talking about here is perhaps a more robust process and a debt analysis of, you've got debts that are falling off, meaning they'll be repaid at certain times, and some of that revenue is gonna go away because the debt goes away. Some of that revenue is gonna stay in place, and now it's gonna be available for maintenance. So I think we need to do a measured impact analysis as part of the budget process, and I'd be delighted to be engaged in doing that along, as you facilitate through that budget process. But
Yeah, I wasn't trying to put you on the spot.
no, and I don't feel on the spot, just so it's understood from the council that my mandate was specifically to figure out funding structure for the police, and I'm
No,
happy.
well, and I apologize to you for that. I didn't know that that was what you were specifically doing. I was under the impression that we were looking at a bigger realm of, that you were going to tell us, possibly what, our borrowing power was.
Debt capacity and.
Yes, and to combine things. I didn't know that you were just.
And I'd be glad to do that.
Yes, and I think in the end, that's what we need. I mean, we need to know how much could we get bonded for, how much could we loan, whatever it is, so that we know, and then we can.
Well, and not to get too much into how, but I'm rather than a top-down, I'm a bottom-up kind of, the analysis I do is from what are the needs specifically, and then how do we fund them, rather than how much can we fund, now what are our needs? So, and we probably arrive at the same place, or very close, just a different approach, but I can do it either way.
I mean, I personally, I would, like I said, I kind of was under the impression we were going a little bit more that way tonight. That's what I think, that's what I personally feel we need, more of an all around, what are our borrowing limits? But I'm not a voting entity, so.
Do we have any other questions for Charlie? You've done a great job.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yep, thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have CTS contract, police station renovation. Kim, you want to take that?
Yeah, Ellie, thank you for joining tonight. If you could come up, please. Many of you already know Ellie, you knew her before I did. I think, is it John? Yeah. That's also here with CTS. Sometime back, we issued an RFP for the, well, there's really several functions to it. Don't get too comfortable on it.
Okay.
Because you may have questions to answer. We issued an RFP. Randy Ober and I were put in charge of reviewing that RFP and coming back with a recommendation, which included, by the way, a guaranteed energy savings. And the council approved that based on the recommendation of approved that RFP. There were only 2 people that did that. Sorry, somebody's got to help me out who the other bidder was, but they did not qualify because they did not have certification.
Right, and I don't remember who it was either. It's been too long ago.
Yeah, so, having said that, I have distributed to all of you a contract that I understand has been reviewed. But having said that, my first and foremost focus, and Ellie assured me of that, so I'm gonna take you right to 6.1.1 of the contract, which means everything being talked about here potentially as a contract is dependent upon the council approving financing, which is what we just talked about. So, yeah, having said that, I don't know if there's any particular questions, trying to get it to you as early as I could get it, and get it distributed to all of you. Ellie, do you have anything to add? Otherwise, I may take this to Finance Committee.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add that we've, obviously, we talked about, and you've seen us, we've been here multiple times talking about the budget, for the renovation of the police station. We did look at all the other city facilities as well. The main focus from an energy standpoint with the exception of, the public works facilities, which are kind of understanding, that Woodward and Kern already had a plan on those buildings, such as the wastewater treatment plant. You know, our main thing was lighting in the other facilities, and, because of the Ameren program that was available, we brought that forward to you guys. It didn't make sense to go through us for that piece of it. It was less, better deal for you guys to use the Ameren rebates and use a electrical contractor that was certified by that. So I believe you moved, or you are still in decision or process with that. So the main focus became the police station renovation, and since we were selected back in November, we've done, we provided budget numbers initially, but then we have since bid out all the work to contractors. We have a significant local contractor participation. We have about 75% of the contractors would be coming from Macoupin and or the adjacent counties. So we were pretty happy with that percentage to be able to keep that local into the community. We're ready if we are approved, as Kim mentioned. The part of the reason why we usually ask for approval of the contract before the financing is because there's a lot of things that have to kind of be finalized, but while that is being worked out. So even if, that 5 weeks that we wouldn't necessarily order material or anything like that, but we would know if we knew that you guys were gonna move forward with financing, we could start doing those types of things so that we could have everything ready to go and get started on work. There is potential concerns about availability of equipment and supplies just because of COVID and the things that we've seen. So that is one of the reasons why we have been sort of pushing a little bit. I know with school projects and things like that, oftentimes, we're hoping to kind of get in the pipeline or before some of those big school projects came along. And so that's where we are. We're ready to go. We would manage it. It is a guaranteed energy savings contract. There is savings associated with it, so there would be we did that as a calculation based on like your typical ASHRAE, which is the American Society of Heating and Refrigeration code, minimum code basis what we're doing. So we are putting in more efficient systems and equipment in the facility. So that's all outlined in it. There's a guarantee associated with that. And then we do also guarantee the cost of the project, so there's no change orders. It's a guarantee. The cost that's listed in this contract is the cost. If we miss something or we have to go back, that's on us. That's our responsibility. We will manage the project. So there is, I think, 16 subcontractors. So from a city standpoint, that would be a pretty hefty thing to try to manage in-house. So we will manage all the contractors. We will have a project manager on site. We do have local project managers that will be managing the project as well. And so yeah, if we're ready to consider it, or if you guys consider it, or if you need to wait, we'll wait. We'll just have to potentially go back to contractors to make sure that costs can be maintained at the level that they are right now. And I welcome any questions.
You mentioned before when we were talking, you said you can get quite a bit of money for grants for heating and cooling. Is that still there?
There will be some potential grants from Ameren. One of the things that we are looking at with Charlie, and I guess he can address that too, is the way that he's talked about setting up the financing is if there are additional grants that we can get after, so not necessarily the federal grant, like the federal money that we're talking about, but any other money that we can get after the project bonding, that you could actually prepay, you could pay that down early. I think it's Charlie, like 2 years or?
We would typically have a provision. I should have clarified that she's right, it's specific to the federal legislation, not the state legislation. And typically we have a 2 or 3 year period that if you obtain grant monies, you can use that to pay down principal.
So any grants that we're able to, again, there's some rebates there. Those aren't significant amounts that would make a huge difference, but those are at least would be applied to the project. And then any other grants that we can
government assistance, there are FEMA grants that are available for police stations, for emergency operations centers. That would be one that we would apply once we'd be under contract and eligible to do that, so that's another one we were zeroing in on.
And I will say too, I think Charlie mentioned 2.5 this time. I think we actually, he says it's conservative. I think we actually said 2.7 last time, and that was a range of like 135 to 145 or something, you know, depending on the cost of the project. So that would be similar to what we had presented, you know, back in January or December or whatever it was.
Those grants that you just talked about, would they reduce the price, the cost of the project?
It would help offset the cost, it wouldn't necessarily reduce.
You would still have to pay, yeah, I mean, the cost would be the cost, but you would just,
It
the
would be
funding
a
mechanism.
source, additional funding source that then again, that we could pay down the loan that you get from Charles.
Can I ask, could you just repeat what you said on the 2 did you say 2.3 to, what did you say?
I said that when we had presented the budget range of costs last time, which we're right around, we're in that range now with the select, even with including the Sally Port. I wanna say that and Charlie, you might have it too, but we had said 2.7% for the rate, whereas he just said he thinks it's closer to 2.5.
Okay.
And then I said that would be a range of about, if on a 20-year funding, that would be a range of about $135,000 to $145,000 per year.
I didn't know you were talking interest, I thought we'd gone up to 2.7.
No,
I
2.7.
actually thought that's what you were saying too, and then I thought, no, wait a minute, that's not what she said.
I'm sorry, well, thank you, glad you clarified. Yeah, 2.7% interest was what we had estimated previously, and he's now saying it's 2.5 potentially, and hopefully he's being conservative like the other
Right,
is.
right.
And then, but yeah, the cost is still is right at the 2,369,952 with the Sally Port enclosure, in the project.
At least the contractual price that's being presented, the last time we had these folks here, at least since I've been here, everything was a budgetary discussion. What do we think it's gonna be? And so the push to get this information to the council was, here's what it's going to be. And I thank you for that effort, based and predicated upon 6.1.1, which says we will proceed to a final contract upon financing being approved by the council. I don't know, based on our prior discussion, how much more we have to talk about, unless you've got questions of Ally, and/or John. Go ahead, Victoria.
Now, this doesn't include IT.
No, it does not.
Do we know what IT is going to cost yet?
We've got some budgetary figures, yes. Dave, do you remember those off the top of your head? Not. We'll get them in the budget session. Yes, we've got some budget figures for IT, but remember, that's not isolated to the police station. That also, you just heard the constituents saying, you need to mechanize. I've heard a lot of talk about that coming off a lot of different discussions. That includes City Hall too, so it's trying to marry all these things up. So it's not just to serve quote unquote a new public safety center, it's also including the City Hall, but we'll get those, we'll also include those in the budget discussion.
Well, I guess too, just to clarify on the 6.1 thing, what basically is, oftentimes, more than, like, pretty much every time we have a project, our contract, because you have to know what you're gonna finance, right? So our contracts are approved prior to the official financing is finalized. So we understand that, that's why we say contingent on financing, because if something were to fall through, or for some reason, something came up where you wouldn't be able to be financed, we would obviously understand that that contract would then be null and void. But by approving it while that financing is taking place, it allows us to be doing our process to get everything ready to go, up into ordering equipment.
And preserve the bids that we've collected from the, or agreed to with subcontractors. And that's where, depending on the time frame, if the financing goes forward with it, if there is an extended period of time that does cause some fluctuation from the contractor or subcontractor's pricings, then you could get yourself in a little bit of a trick bag.
And I think it's a very valid point, being in a business that depends on supply chain. Trust me, there's blockages in that supply chain and the prices aren't going down. So just keep that in mind.
We haven't even, like, since we've been in this summer, we need to go back and verify, you know, there was a few people that were able to kind of keep it where it is, but I don't know how much longer we can.
I've got some questions. I know that initially we put out a request for proposals.
Right.
And this whole thing has been confusing and misrepresented to me. I just find it confusing. We started out with an energy audit, or energy survey for the buildings, and now we've got a general contractor. So my question is, if we're looking at now a general contractor for this project, why aren't we looking at try to get, another general contractor, give us an estimate, and I know the request for proposals initially was wrote with assistance from you, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if we're looking at a general contractor, why don't we look at others to try to compare?
Well, I guess to be clear, what we're doing here in the contract that's in front of you is a guaranteed energy savings contract. So it is what was requested by the request for proposal. There are benefits of, when we were selected through the RFP, it was to be your guaranteed energy savings contractor, which could include a variety of, it wasn't for energy audits. If you go back to the language, it was to look at all your different facilities and identify all the different areas where projects could be implemented. The big thing about guaranteed energy savings contract, the other component of it is it's really design build for existing buildings. So there's oftentimes a significant amount of renovation work associated with those types of projects. We've done it, all throughout the state of Illinois, and even in our response, we to the request, we outlined that the police station facility we understood was that #1 priority, and outlined kind of preliminarily, the plan of action for that as well. And then I will say, we bid it out. We're really, in essence, we have the general contractor. We bid it out to multiple general contractors. We bid out to multiple mechanicals. We bid out to electrical contractors. So really, in essence, we're the project manager, construction manager of it, and we have competitively bid out, all of the work as your partner in this process.
So would it not benefit us to look at other general contractors or other project managers to compare prices, or is that not?
The biggest thing is if you were gonna do that, you would have to go back, you would have to hire an architect, you would have to hire an engineer, you would pay for those, you would pay for an architect, you'd pay for an engineer, so you'd have those costs up front, which we've done at risk. And then you would have to have them put, detailed specifications together, and then, you would pay for all that up front, and then you would then have to go back out for the detailed specifications. There would not be the guarantee of the performance with the no change orders. There would be the guarantee of the energy. So it's not just as easy as to say, we can just call a general contractor and get bids, because you would have to design the whole thing. Because as of right now, the design has been ours, so.
It's two different procurement methods essentially, because there's the traditional bid spec route where you go through and, like she said, go through the channels, hire an architect to develop the design. And this system that there's specified state law that dictates how this goes is designed to help offset that risk. So a contractor or an energy services company like us would come in, evaluate the facilities, like you said, there was an energy audit that was part of that assessment to determine, because what we're trying to do is build systems that are gonna not only meet the needs of the use for the facility, but then are gonna incur the lowest amount of energy costs on a going forward basis. So we're trying to look at the life cycle of the facility as a whole. So with respect to that, then, because we're gonna be putting in certain equipment that might not be the lowest bid, or, you know, the lowest amount, we're putting in the one that's gonna be the lowest amount at that initial time of purchase. We're looking at the entire time, so if this, if we know this type of equipment is gonna save energy, plus it has lower maintenance fees, those kinds of things. So all that is taken into consideration at the time of the design, as opposed to, again, putting the pictures, the look of it, then consulting an engineer, then working through all that. So it's all just encapsulated in one basket, so to speak. That's our method that we use with different facilities around the country. And again, sometimes it's a method that is appealing depending on what the type of project it is. I mean, this is one that's right in our wheelhouse, or right in an ESCO's wheelhouse, because it's the renovation of an existing facility.
Make a comment, Mayor. There is a special legislation in Illinois state law that provides for this, and I think it's designed, as part of its design, is to promote the long-term energy savings as opposed to the short-term bidding, because I think the state was trying to, and the federal government was trying to promote a long-term look at these types of projects. So it is a little different than regular contracting, but it is Illinois state law, I think, for that reason, because I think the design of it, the legislation was designed to look long-term at longer-term energy innovations and savings, as opposed to, you know, the lowest bidder on this date. It allows looking at those things over time, and it allows this type of management.
Thank you, Again, in the scheme of things, you know, I would love to have a new police building, love it. I think it's going to be beautiful. I know Dave has been working very hard on it, I appreciate that effort. But I just don't think we're there yet. I think it should be tabled until we get a better plan.
I agree with that. I think it should be tabled.
Too many other projects we want to do that's more important than the police station. You've got to know, I'm 100% police, you know, law enforcement. I retired from it. To me, there's sewers are caving in. We got streets falling apart. There's a lot more stuff that should be a lot more important than the police station. That's my opinion.
Okay, we're tabling then, we'll have a discussion.
Thank you very much for coming. Did everybody get all their questions answered? Truly appreciate it. All right, thank you. So we have a motion to table by Todd Kohler, seconded by, well, it's actually tabled by Kim Harbour, seconded by John Labora. Clerk will call the roll.
Downey,
Yes.
Harbor,
Yes.
Kohler,
Yes.
Lamora,
Yes.
Ling,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Over,
Yes.
Whiteside.
Yes.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have the update for the IARWC, which is our, what I call the Alluvial Water Company. I'm gonna read, Joe DeRizo is our representative, and he works on Monday nights, so the way we're gonna try and do this is he'll type up what happened at the meeting, and I'm gonna read it. And then also, if we have more questions, Dan Harold went to the meeting, I went to the meeting, so I'm gonna start by reading what Joe has to say. Mayor and Alderman, I want to thank you for the opportunity to serve my community with the recent appointments as the Carlinville IARWC representative. The meeting dates of this position fall with my days off from my employer, and it will be a great fit with my work schedule. It is my intention to give a written update each month following our meeting. If subject matter warrants a council meeting appearance, I will make the appropriate arrangements to attend in person. If any of you ever need more or additional information, please do not hesitate to contact me. Most of you have my contact information, I believe it or not. The city clerk can provide it to you. I will list our discussion points below. Please keep in mind this meeting is kind of a restart since it had been a long time in between meetings due to the litigation. IARWC meeting 3/25/2021. Number one, Attorney David Foreman gave a lengthy update on the litigation issue and the green light to move the project forward. He also was going to contact the city attorneys of each municipality to get input on invoice pay procedures from the municipalities. Number two, discussion on website and Facebook page for public relations. Since employee access will be needed for a website, a domain will be reserved. Number three, land purchase for the water plant facility will be a priority. Number four, final date for membership will be the board's June meeting. Number five, treasurer's report was received and reviewed. Invoices for project to date were presented. Number six, meeting minutes from June 2020 meetings were reviewed and approved. 7, easement work continues for all members. 8, well field testing / design continues, weather permitting. Joe DeRisa. For the place of any comments?
Make a comment first.
Yes, you can make a comment, yes, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
I would just add to it, because I know that Alderman Downey brought it up, and this would be something that you wouldn't be aware of, because but I do, to address something you brought up earlier in regards to IARWC. I had a conversation with David Wallace from Rural Development. He's the Champaign office. He's the contact and the focal point helping put this project together, just as he was for Gateway, and of course the project EJ Water there outside of Decatur. And he's familiar with the projects they've done across the country. They've financed a lot of these. So just to address the question of whether it would be reimbursed, the way it works is it's kind of like a construction loan for a home. Before they release the grants and loans, and I think this has been gone over before, but I just want to make sure people understand it. They wanted the entity to fund the initial designs and some of the other expenses. Now, when I talked to David after the decision was announced, of course, he never believed that we should have been in that position to start with, so he commented on that. But basically, he said what we need to do is redouble our efforts, because the quicker we can get these easements and design work finished, the quicker we get funded. And so the way it is set up and the way the easements are set up are for Alluvial to take those over, and CoBank, who has funded a lot of these projects all over the country, that's their expectation too, is that they will, in effect, they will take over whatever amount we spent on these easements and the design. So I've talked to David Wallace, the council isn't aware of that, and he's all systems go, and the only impediment to getting this stuff reimbursed is how quickly we can get our little part of it done.
So we are gonna get reimbursed fully for.
Fully, dollar for
because
dollar.
Alderman Campbell, when she was on here, said that we should consider this our project because the
We-
possibility of getting reimbursed were very slim.
Well, that's not the case.
Okay.
The concern was, we were quite frankly trying to keep the project going, okay, because of the various lawsuits. But I'm just saying, that's a conversation I had with David Wallace, well, I think a day after the decision. So, that's when I last talked to him. And and one of the reasons we had EJ Water, they spent their own money to help us as a friend of the court, was they're in the middle of this same type of project. And so they wanted to make sure that this decision went the way it did. And so, yes, but anyway, I'm just telling you, now, can I guarantee it, just like the gentleman said? Well, he can't guarantee he's getting a refund. I'm just saying, this is what David Wallace told me personally. So the impetus is to get this completed, and then the quicker we get this phase completed, which had been stopped, which I think will happen very quickly, we'll just get reimbursed for it. And of course, the debt, the overall debt for the project, the part of the loan, belongs to Illinois Alluvial, it doesn't belong to Carlinville. So whether, but I mean, so all we will have is the supply contract, which we already, the council signed years ago. And that's a 40-year supply contract, which is pretty much a standard water contract for all these type of projects. So anyway, I just wanted
Well, thank
to
you for
update
explaining.
you there, because I think David is very positive about this project, so.
Any other questions on that? Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, so I guess we'll move on. Do you have any other questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so next is the revised estimate for MFT program, and I think Dan held that.
Good evening. So what we have here is a revised estimate for maintenance costs. You'll notice up in the top of the first page of this two-page document, the date for the beginning of this is 01/01/21, and the ending is 4/30/22. Now, the MFT budget ran on the calendar year, okay? And of course, Carlinville's budget runs May 1st through August 30th. What we're doing here is we're syncing those up so that our MFT budget will be in the same time frame as the city budget, which should make it easier on Jody's end, and it should be able, allow us to be able to direct as many of our resources as we need to be able to account for those a little easier. Previous to this, the state would ask you for this number, for these numbers in like November, which is like right in the middle of our budget process. So in a sense, you were sort of working with money for a next year's budget that hadn't been approved yet, that kind of thing. So I thought this was a good idea to do it this way. And so I'm asking for the council's approval for the mayor to be able to sign this, and then we'll be on the same fiscal time period.
Question. Joey, you good with that?
Sure.
That was easy.
I can give a simple answer sometimes.
Thank you.
So do we need a motion to accept this?
I'll make a motion that we allow the mayor to sign this revised MFT program.
Mayor, I'll second.
Motion by Building for me to sign the revised MFT, seconded by Randy Wilbur. Clerk will call the roll.
Carver,
Yes.
McLean,
Yes.
Fuller,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Link,
Yes.
Downey,
Yes.
Over,
Yes.
Whiteside.
Yes.
Anybody have
Thank
anything
you.
else?
You might want to remind everybody about city cleanup.
Oh,
We
yeah.
haven't had one for a long time. It's coming up this weekend.
Yeah.
Okay, be Friday and Saturday. Make sure you don't bring your paint, your batteries, your tires. Landscaping, we already take care of, over the other area there, that kind of thing. Make sure you bring something to show that you're a resident of the city, electric bill, water bill, something to that effect. Yes, sir?
Mowing grass in the street, tell them how to do that.
Okay, and he said to tell everybody how to mow your grass in the street, that's true, that's an ordinance, not to do that. And, this Friday, we're going to sweep the square at 6 a.m. So, everybody needs to make sure they have their vehicles off the square so that we can sweep it.
Inside the square,
Park inside the square?
park inside the square.
Leave the outer ring empty.
Friday.
Thank you.
We're just gonna do that every Friday again then?
Yeah, we'll do that, likely through, into October, something like that, depending on what happens with the weather.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned by Downey,
Second.
seconded by Fuller. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign.
Joey, did you come down?
You guys get the number?